Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Aho Vakiyam Stankalkutam Jighansayapayayadapya sadhvi lebhe gatim dhatriuchitam tatonyam kam vadayalum sharanam brajema Cheto darparnamarjanam bhavamaha davagninirvapanam Shreya Kairavachandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnapanam Param Vijayate Shri krishna Sankirtanam Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tagvangha Devamatma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukchurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. The Divine Souls. This week I'm talking to you about Shri Krishna Leelas of the Bhagvatam. Yesterday I was explaining about the spectrum of Madhurya and Aishwarya, and you learned that it is Shri Krishna's nature to be loving. When he lets that natural side of his personality get revealed, then he behaves as we know Krishna does, loving, charming, playful. He does very intimate leelas. And when he restricts that due to any other requirement or in any other form, then his Aishwarya shows through to the extent the divine love is concealed. So on one hand you have Madhurya or Prem, and on the other hand you have Aishwarya or almightiness. I also explained to you that when Shri Krishna is behaving in this loving way with his friends or his mother or the gopis, whoever it may be, he's not acting. He's really like that. He's really that soft-hearted that when one of them loves him, he forgets everything. And under the effect of that prem, which comes from Radharani, and keeps Shri Krishna under its control. And those bhakt saints, or those rasik saints, have also received that prem, and that is why Shri Krishna becomes subservient to them. Aham bhakta paradhino hyasvatantra ivadvij sadhu bhirgrasta hridayo. In the Bhagvatam, Shri Krishna tells Durvasa Ji that my bhakt has control over my heart. I am subservient. Aham bhakta paradhinaha. I am paradhin. Although Bhagwan is said to be parama swatantra, he is absolutely independent because everything depends on him. He doesn't depend on anyone. The souls depend on Krishna. If he wasn't sitting inside of our soul giving life to us, our soul would be nothing. But he doesn't depend on us. We depend on him. Maya also does nothing without Shri Krishna. Maya is just a lifeless energy. If Shri Krishna doesn't activate it, then Maya is in this Mahapralaya state, absolute nothingness. So Maya depends on Krishna, the souls depend on Krishna, even the other forms of God are dependently established in Shri Krishna's personality. They're all his swanch, his abhinna swarup. They're a partial manifestation of his personality or power. So Shri Krishna is the absolute ruler, absolute supreme Ishwar of all that exists, except those God-realized saints who have received his prem. He becomes subservient to them. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to the second leela today. So I told you, Shri Krishna does not pretend in those loving leelas, but his almightiness is readily available to him whenever he needs it. In those leelas with his devotees, the rasik saints, he does truly forget he's God. But whenever required, he can call upon that godliness, that almightiness to perform any task, such as killing a demon, or fighting something, or doing something godly or almighty. Now one day, Shri Krishna went out with the Gwalbals and they grazed. At this time, they were grazing the cows. The boys were a little older. Balaram stayed home for some reason on this day, so Shri Krishna was out there without his big brother. They were out grazing, and it was the Grishma Ritu, the hot, dry season, before the monsoon comes. It was so hot, so when they got to Yamuna, everybody was so thirsty and ready to drink. Now the Gwalbals and cows had gone a little bit ahead. When they got to Yamuna, they just went ahead and drank. They didn't realize they were at the pool in Yamuna where Kaliya Nag lived. Kaliya Nag was such a poisonous snake that just by being in the water, the whole water became poisonous. This was a big, deep pool where Kaliya Nag lived, and that part of the river became so poisonous that even if the wind was blowing a little bit, so there were some waves, and the wind took a little bit of the spray of the waves, just, when the wave hits the shore, it makes a little splash, and then if the wave carried even some of those water droplets onto the vegetation on the bank of the river, that vegetation would dry up and die. If a bird flew too close to the surface of the water, that bird would just fall dead in the water. This is how poisonous the water was. Even a little bit of the vapor from it was poisonous. So the Gwalbals and cows went ahead and they all drank heartily from the river, and they all died again. So Shri Krishna came up, he saw them, he immediately brought them back to life. So all the Gwalbals stood up and they were amazed. They didn't know what happened, but they understood the river's poisonous. So Krishna decided, okay, we have to clean up Yamuna Ji. It's time to get this Kaliya Nag out of here. So there was a Kadamba tree. Kadamba tree is a big tree that grows big and creates a very nice canopy. A lot of kunj are made out of those Kadamba trees, and they have nice round yellow flowers like that. If you ever go to Mangar, right in front of the hospital, there's 4 or 5 Kadamba trees lining the street there. So this was a huge Kadamba tree, and its branches were overhanging the river, the pool. Kalida, it's called, the big pool where Kaliya Nag lived. Da means a big, deep pool. Krishna climbed that pool, and he knew Kaliya Nag was in there and was very bad-tempered, very angry, poisonous snake. Shri Krishna stood up on the top branch of that tree overhanging the river, and he started bouncing on that branch like a springboard, like a diving board. And you know how the wrestlers show that they're ready for a fight? Krishna does this. And he jumps off into Kalida. And he landed in such a way that it made a huge splash to attract Kaliya Nag's attention. And then once he had landed and made that splash, then he used his big, powerful arms to make the water go back and forth. So he's just churning everything up, calling Kaliya Nag out. So Kaliya Nag came, and furiously came. He actually had 101 heads. He had pun, like a cobra, actually, the pun, the hood of the cobra. 101 heads like that. So he came furiously towards Krishna, and he bit him hard right on the chest, and then wrapped his tail and body around Krishna and went down to the bottom of Kalida, underwater. So Krishna has to make the fight a little interesting. So he just tried to see, okay, what is Kaliya Nag going to do? How powerful is he? Let's give him a chance to do something. So he just let him keep squeezing him and hold him underwater for quite a while. Now all the Gwalbals and even the cows got so concerned seeing this. The cows became very distressed, and the Gwalbals were looking at their best friend Krishna being held underwater by this huge snake, and they all fainted right there on the bank of the Yamuna. Now, back home, Nanda Baba and some of the gopis, they started seeing some bad omens. Although they were far away from where Krishna was, there were some signs appearing in the weather or the birds or something that gave them some idea something bad is happening. So they got worried immediately because Krishna went out without his big brother Balaram today, so who knows what could happen. So Balaram was just smiling, thinking about this, because he was the only one who always knew about Krishna. He knew his little brother's power. He knew who Krishna was. In fact, Balaram is another form of Krishna. So Balaram just went along with it. He didn't say anything. Nanda Baba got all the gopis together, and all the gopis came with Yashoda Maiya, and they all went out in the forest, and they found Krishna's tracks, because his footprint has very distinctive markings on the bottom. Sometimes you see in those silver paduka that people have, there's little designs in it. So those are the designs that Bhagwan has on the soles of his feet. So when he walks in the soft ground of Braj, it leaves those designs in his footprints. So they found those footprints of Krishna, and they started following them, and followed them all the way to the Yamuna. So as they were following the path and they were getting close, they saw further ahead, the cows were behaving very strangely, and all the Gwalbals are passed out here and there on the side of the river. So they became even more concerned. They came rushing to the edge of the river, and they looked down. They could see down in the water that Krishna was still being held down there. Although they didn't know how long he'd been there for, but they saw he's there, and this big, huge snake has him. So they became so worried. Nanda Baba was ready to jump in after him, but he would have perished in the poison water. So Balram held him and the other gopis back from jumping in, and the gopis all held Mother Yashoda back. Now this Kaliya Nag, you might be interested to know, why was he living in Yamuna River? Let me tell you that before we finish the story. Garud is the divine carrier. There's no such bird like this in the world, so sometimes we say that Garudaji is a divine eagle because that's the most majestic bird in the whole world, but Garud is not exactly an eagle. He's a divine species of bird, and he carries Shri Krishna or Vishnu. He's the divine carrier. And his enemy, he is the enemy of snakes. Birds of prey tend to catch snakes, right? So Garud had a enmity or animosity with snakes. One time Kaliya Nag, although Kaliya Nag was living on an island in the ocean called Ramarnak Dweep. Dweep means an island. So it was a beautiful island where Kaliya Nag lived. Ramarnak Dweep. But he did something to antagonize Garudaji. And because of that, Garudaji was chasing him all over the place. And there was only one place he could hide. Because Garudaji had one Muni. This Muni would not let Garudaji go into that pool in Yamuna. Saubhari Muni. Saubhari Muni used to do tapasya in Yamuna. He would go down in the water and sit on the bottom and hold his breath and watch the fish. The fish were his friends. So he had told Garudaji, these aquatic creatures are my friends. Don't you come here in Yamuna and eat them, okay? So Garud mostly obeyed him, but one time he disobeyed him. And he went and he ate the king of all the fish in that area, and all the other fish were very sad. So Saubhari Muni said, Garud, if you ever come in this water again, for any reason, you'll die immediately. So for that reason, Garudji could not enter that part of Yamuna. And since he was chasing Kaliya Nag, and Kaliya Nag somehow knew this secret, he was the only one who knew this secret, so he escaped from his Ramarnak Dweep to get away from Garudji, and he went into that pool of Yamuna. But because he was such a poisonous snake, the whole pool got made so poisonous that nobody could make use of the water of Yamuna in that area. So anyway, Krishna knew all this, and he had decided it's time to rectify this situation. So this is why he picked a fight with Kaliya Nag on this day. Now, seeing from under the water, Krishna looked up and he saw, oh, my mother's come, my father's come, all the gopis are here, and they're all so distressed. Okay, enough playing around. So he inflated his body because Kaliya Nag was wrapped around him. So he inflated his body until Kaliya Nag was starting to feel pain, so he let Krishna go. And Kaliya Nag was then trying to use all of his heads and snapping at Krishna. And Krishna was moving around, doing all these wrestling moves. But then he got very creative. He jumped up onto one of Kaliya Nag's pan, now up out of the water. Remember, he had 101 hoods, 101 heads. So Krishna jumped up on one and he started to dance. Keep in mind, Krishna can be very heavy if he wants to. Although he's just a little boy at this point, but he has the whole universe inside of him. Inside of his belly, the whole universe is there. So how heavy do you think he can be on Kaliya Nag's head if he wants to be? He started dancing, and he was dancing classical dance steps. And the Devtas came from Swarg and started playing tabla and mridang and giving him like a proper percussion, so he would have dance to fall, nice music to do his dance to. And he started dancing on Kaliya Nag's head. And when one head would bow down, but another head was up high, he would go on that head that was showing pride, and he would dance on it until it went down. And he kept doing that, jumping from head to head and dancing in a classical way until, and it was described, it was something very unique that was also happening was Kaliya Nag has jewels in the top of his head, these like rubies. So when Krishna was dancing, it made his feet shine in a very pink way, and he was just dancing around on all the heads. So finally, Kaliya Nag was completely subdued, and there were some other snakes, a few, who were his wives, and they came and prayed to Krishna. They said, he has been defeated by you now, and you may kill him, we don't know, but we just wanted to let you know that, we won't be any more problem for you, and he won't be any more problem for you, but whatever you decide as a punishment is fine. They also mentioned about the greatness of Shri Krishna's charan. Nanak prishtham na cha sarvabhaumam na parameshtyam na mahendradhishnyam na yoga siddhira punarbhavam va vanchanti yat padarajah prapannam. They said, oh, Krishna, he has had the soles of your lotus feet on his heads, on all of his heads. He is so lucky. And they gave some comparison. They said, the one who has yat padarajaha, the one who has received your foot dust, the dust from the soles of your feet, vanchanti, they only desire your foot dust and nothing else. So blissful it is, so gracious it is. And then they told some comparisons. Nakaprishtham, that means Brahma's abode, the topmost abode of Swarg. Even if you ask them to trade, now you've received Krishna's foot dust and you experienced his grace through his foot dust, would you like Brahma's abode? That person would not be interested at all. Nasarva bhaumam, would you like to become the ruler of the whole earth planet? No interest whatsoever. Naparameshtyam, Patal, Rasatal, where King Bali and other demons have ruled. It's the counterpart of Swarg. It's not Narak. Those Asurs, they also have their proper abode, which is like Swarg. They have Rajas and Tamas enjoyments over there, whereas the Devtas have their Sattvic enjoyments. So would you like to rule those demon abodes and enjoy their pleasures over there? No. Doesn't care about that either. Namahendradhishnyam, would you like to become king of the celestial gods, king of the Devtas, Indra? Nope, not interested. Na yoga siddhi, would you like the great 8 yogic siddhis, Anima, Laghima, Garima? You'd have the greatest Mayic powers. That person doesn't even want that. Apavarg, moksha, that person doesn't want that either. He's not interested in any of these things, O Krishna, because he has received your foot dust, and now our husband has received your foot dust on all of his heads. He is so lucky. So whatever punishment you want to give, we will gladly accept. Krishna said, now that you have my footprints on your heads, Garuda is not going to bother you. He'll see those footprints and he'll just give you safe passage. So you have to leave Yamuna now and go back to where you used to live, that Ramanak Dweep. Go back and live over there. So Kaliya Nag left, and instantly as he left and went back to Ramanak Dweep, Yamuna immediately became fresh and pure, and from then on everybody could jump in and swim and drink that water, and the cows came and drank, and everybody was happy. Now they were very tired that night, so they didn't want to walk all the way back home, so they decided to sleep there on the bank of Yamuna River. Remember I told you one story about Krishna inhaling the fire when he was just with the Gwalbals? It happened another time. This time when they were sleeping on the bank of Yamuna, and it was that Grishma Ritu. It was so hot and so dry, so during the night a fire just started from the heat. And everybody woke up, and Krishna had to do the same thing again. He just inhaled that whole forest fire. So that was that Kaliya Nag, leela. Now, you've heard a lot about the Sakyabhav leelas, the leelas of Krishna and his friends. This Sakyabhav is not the closest relationship a Rasik saint could have with Krishna, and yet look, what is the power of that? These Rasik saints who love Krishna with Sakyabhav, they love Krishna as their own friend. Krishna completely forgets who he is as far as being God, and he just plays with those friends. The Bhagvatam describes them going, while the calves or cows are grazing, they're out just having fun. I mean, one of the boys is imitating the sound of frogs, and Krishna is over here imitating how a peacock walks, and another one is yelling at a cliff trying to make the echo come back, and another one is over here wrestling. They just have fun all the day long, and Krishna keeps playing and giving bliss to his friends and enjoying that manas anand as well. But the Vatsalya Bhav is even closer. Aham bhakta paradhinaha. Even the sakhas have that power over Krishna that he becomes subservient to them. But Vatsalya Bhav is even closer. Vatsalya Bhav includes the feelings of Sakhya Bhav, but is more intimate. Of course, Mother Yashoda and Nanda Baba are the main example of this love, although there were some older gopis and older gopis who thought of Krishna as their own son. They also loved him in that way. This Vatsalya Bhav is so amazing that not only does Shri Krishna forget that he's God, but he becomes, see, with his sakhas, they're even, because with a friend, you're the same, you're equals. But the parent is greater, and the child is under the parent. So Mother Yashoda's love for Shri Krishna brought Krishna under her control. She had the right over Krishna. She had to feed him, dress him, make him sleep, wake him up, bathe him, discipline him if necessary. Can you imagine a soul having that relationship with God? Being able to say, Krishna, you only ate half a roti today. What's wrong? Eat one more. No, you can't only have mithai. You have to have this sabzi too. And then Krishna says, "Oh, Mom, I'm just tired of eating. I want to sit in your lap." And he jumps in your lap. And if Mother Yashoda is busy, and she says, no, you can't come in my lap right now. I have to finish this chore. And Krishna is crying to get into Mother Yashoda's lap. Again, is he acting? Would God really want to get into the lap of a soul that much that he would cry? Yes. Real tears. Because Mother Yashoda loves Krishna as her own child. So Krishna really, he wants into Mother Yashoda's lap. Can you imagine God wanting to get into your lap? One time Narad Ji came down from the divine abode. He wanted to see what leela Shri Krishna was up to. And he saw this going on. That, okay, I thought Bhagwan had descended on earth in the form of a little boy. But it looks to me like this woman is God. Because the soul is supposed to cry to get into God's lap. I mean, since eternity, the soul has been longing for God. But here, it's reversed. This boy is crying to get into the lap of the mother, so she must be God, and this must be the soul. Naradji was so amazed. But no, that was God crying to get into the lap of a soul, due to the effect of that prem that we already discussed. So Mother Yashoda is in possession of that prem. Therefore, Shri Krishna is helpless before her. This is why Vedavyasji says, Muktim dadasi karhichit smana bhakti yogam. Krishna is very quick to give mukti. If you ask him for mukti, it's no problem. Oh yes, take it. Then he's done with you. Because mukti means you asked and you got it, and now we have koi sambandh nahi hai. Koi matlab nahi hai uske baad. Why not? Because when you get mukti, you merge into Krishna's formless aspect. After that, you stay in that unconscious. You're alive, but you're unconscious in that divine ocean of Brahmanand. But you have no experience and no awareness of your own existence, and you have no interaction with Krishna. You're just merged into his formless aspect. So if you ask him for mukti, oh sure, here, have mukti. And he's thinking to himself, bach gaya. He even tries to give dhokha to Kag Bhushundi. You would have heard Sri Maharaj Ji describe this so many times. Kag Bhushundi manguvar ati prasanna mohi jana animadik siddhi apar nidhi moksha sakal sukha khan. Oh, my devotee Kag Bhushundi, I'm so pleased with you. Why don't you ask for a boon? I'll give you anything. And then he shows him the menu. He says, you can have aparanidhi, unlimited wealth. I can call Kuber right now, tell him to give you all the money. Or you can have siddhi, yogic siddhis, these great mayic powers. You can have that if you want. Or moksha sakala sukha khan. Look at the sales job he's doing. Moksha is the giver of all happiness. Why don't you ask me for moksha? And Kag Bhushundi says, what, was I born yesterday? I'm not that much of a fool to ask for these mayic things, aparanidhi or yogic siddhis or moksha. Hey, Bhagwan, who would ask for moksha? When you get moksha, your bhakti ras is finished forever. You never see leelas or partake in leelas. So Kag Bhushundi said, Aviral bhakti vishuddha tav shruti puran jehi gav jehi khojat yogish muni prabhu prasad ko pav Dehu daya kariram. I want the thing that's not on the menu. Sometimes there's a house special. You have to know to ask for it. It's not on the regular menu for the regular customers, but if you know about it, you can specially request it. So you're showing me all these things, but I want the thing you're hiding in your back pocket. Your bhakti, your prem. That's what I want. So Krishna knows if that devotee is wise enough to ask for prem, fir to phans gaye. Once he gives his prem to that devotee, he's caught. That devotee and him now, they're going to do amazing leelas, and sometimes Shri Krishna's durdasha happens. It means he gets in trouble. See, today, the leela I'm going to tell you, Shri Krishna was only 2 years old, and Maya was nursing him. And she also had milk boiling on the stove to make curd and butter and all the things. Only for Krishna she was doing that. So she was sitting and Krishna was happily nursing. He was so happily nursing, blissfully. And all of a sudden Maya heard the milk boil over. She heard the sound on the stove. So she quickly put Krishna down, abruptly, and ran to take the pot of milk off the stove. So when that abrupt thing happened, Krishna felt a little angry. He didn't know what's going on in the next room. All he knew is, Maya just put me down like that? He's only 2 years old. What does he understand? But he knows how to express his anger. So he sees some curd pots, some earthen pots over there, and he also sees a big pestle, for grinding spices. So it was about this big. Little Krishna picked that up in his little hand, and he went over to those earthen pots and started smashing them. However many pots were there, he smashed them all. And then he felt a little afraid. Maya's going to come back. So he just dropped the pestle and he ran out of there. So Maya, of course, came back and saw, and she knew right away, oh, what is Kanha getting up to today? And now she felt angry. All that curd wasted? Today I'm not letting him get away with it. So she went looking for Krishna. Now Krishna had gone next door to a gopi's house and stolen another pot of curd. And he found some nearby monkeys, and he went up on a big boulder. He climbed up on a big rock, and he's surrounded by monkeys, and he's just feeding them the curd. And they're all jumping around. He's happily feeding everybody, but he's also looking around. Maya could be coming from any direction, so he's looking. Now Maya spied him from a distance, and she snuck around behind him. And she got closer and closer, and just when she was going to grab him, he realized she was there, and he jumped down and started running, leaving the pot and leaving the monkeys. So normally, Krishna's 2 years old, but he's swift of foot. And Maya is not very fast, but today she's determined. Kanhaiya, you are not getting away with this. Today you need to be punished. So Krishna started running, and Maya started following. And Krishna really was scared. He didn't want to get caught today, but after a while he saw that Maya's there's sweat coming off of her, and her ornaments are getting loose, and her sari's getting loose, and she's slowing down. So Krishna felt a little bad. So he also slowed down and let Maya catch him. But now he's in trouble, because Maya is determined to teach him a lesson today. So she brings him over to the ukhal, the big pot for pounding rice, big heavy pot. And she decides, first things first, I'm going to tie you up here. So she got a length of cord. Krishna's only 2 years old. How big is he around his waist? Like this big, right? So, and the ukhal is maybe this big. So she goes and gets a sufficient length of rope and makes Krishna stand there and brings the rope, and it's 1 inch too short. She brings it and the ends don't meet. She can't tie a knot. So she goes and gets more rope. She joins the two pieces of rope and brings them together, and it's still that much too short. She gets another piece of rope and joins that, and it's still that much too short. She went through this process until all the rope in the whole house had been used up, and she was exhausted. And it was still that much too short. Finally, again, Krishna had mercy on his mother, and he allowed himself to be tied up. Once he was tied up, Maya just left him. She said, this is like some jail time for you. So you just stay here she was going to leave him for a few minutes. He's only 2 years old. In a few minutes he can learn his lesson. So she tied up Krishna to the ukal. Now see the situation. God has been tied up by the soul. Whereas it is the soul who's tied up by Maya, and God has to, if the soul surrenders to God, then God has to undo the bondage of Maya. But here, aho chitram bande tat prema bandhanam yad baddham muktidam muktam Brahma Krida Bhrigi Kritam. Here Krishna is the one tied up. So the giver of mukti, mukti do mukti michhati. The giver of mukti, Supreme God, is now asking for his liberation because he's tied up. And how did Maya have the power to tie up Supreme God? Because she has prem. So now Krishna is tied up by Maya, and she's satisfied that, okay, I gave him his punishment. Let me leave him for a few minutes. And she went back to clean up. She was just going to come very soon. In that short amount of time, Krishna started crawling. And he had this rope tied around him and to the ukal, but there was a little bit of slack. So he could crawl and pull the ukal, although he shouldn't have been able to. But he was able to slowly drag it. And he dragged it out of the angan and towards these two trees. There were two big trees in the angan, Yamalarjun trees. That's the type of tree it was. Now Krishna had something in mind. He knew this tree and this tree, these are special trees, and they've been waiting for me. And it's time for me to grace them. So who are those trees? What did Krishna do to them? You'll have to wait to find out tomorrow, because the story goes on longer than we have for today. So these are a few more leelas of the Bhagvatam from tonight. And tomorrow I'll continue this leela, and we'll also start talking about Madhurya Bhav leelas, the Gopi Bhav leelas of the Bhagvatam. Bolo Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki. So let us spend a few minutes doing some kirtan and meditating on these leelas of Shri Krishna. Again, try to put yourself in the position. Would you like to be one of Krishna's friends? Would you like to be Mother Yashoda? Would you like to be Nanda Baba? What position would you like to be in? What would it be like, really, if you could be injected into one of those leelas, and you get to participate, and Krishna is treating you as his best friend, or you're his mother, or you're his father. So really think about that, and do Roop Dhyan on that as we do a few minutes of kirtan. Radhe Radhe Govinda Radhe 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 Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govinda
राधे राधे गोविंद राधे 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 राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद राधे 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 राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद राधे 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 राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद राधे 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 राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद 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 राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद राधे 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 राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद गोविंद 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 राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
गोविंद राधे
राधे राधे गोविंद 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 गोविंद राधे
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Radhe 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 Radhe
Radhe Radhe Radhe
Radhe Radhe Radhe
Radhe Radhe Radhe
Radhe Radhe Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Radhe 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 Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Radhe 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 Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind 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 Radhe
Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind 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 Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Govind Radhe
Radhe Radhe Govind Radhe 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 Radhe
Ladli Lal ki. We'll have a quick quiz today as well. Although the main thing is that you just lovingly remember the Leelas, but it's fun to try to remember the details as well. And if you ever want to share one of these Leelas with someone, it's more enjoyable for them if you can provide more details. So, can anyone remember the name of the saint who used to do tapasya in Yamuna? Yes, Janvi? Yeah, that name is coming up, but he wasn't the saint. Yes, Saubhari Muni. Saubhari Muni. He's famous from another story in the Bhagvatam also. He was sitting down in Yamuna doing tapasya, and he just thought all of a sudden of enjoying the world. He just had a thought. Because of something he saw under there, it just gave him an idea. I should also enjoy the world. So then he came up out of Yamuna, and there was a king, Mandhata, who had 50 daughters. So he just went to the king, and the king knew it's Saubhari Muni, he's so powerful, I'll just do whatever he wants. So he said, I want to marry your daughter. And the king said, I don't know, if it's up to her, if she wants to marry you. So Saubhari, using his power, he made himself very handsome. So in fact, all 50 of the king's daughters wanted to marry him. So he said, okay. Using his yogic power, he made himself 50 bodies to inhabit and married all 50 daughters and lived with them for many, many years and had kids. And then after a long time, he realized, what am I doing? One fine day, I'm doing tapasya underwater in Yamuna, and the next, I'm married to 50 princesses. I've entered into grihasth life, and I have all these kids. Oh, Manushyo! He said, he warned all the humans that kusang can have a very powerful effect, so keep your mind in God. Don't allow the world to pull you in. Anyway, that's a side story of Saubhari Muni. That's the same Muni who was living or doing tapasya in Yamuna. So, who did he, it wasn't really a curse, but it was like a curse. Gave somebody a warning that if you enter these waters, you're going to die. Yes, Jia. Garudji, that's right. And who is Garud? What's his job description? Yes. Yeah, carrier. You know how everybody has someone they ride on? Ganesh Ji has a mouse, and Kartikeya has a peacock, Brahma has a hunts. So Shri Krishna has Garud. Krishna, Ram, Vishnu, they all have Garud. Okay, what was the pool called where the poisonous snake was living? Kalindi is just another name of Yamuna. It's a nickname of Yamuna. Kalida, that's where we go swimming in Radha Madhav Dham. And what was the name of the snake? Kaliya. That's right, Kaliya Nag. Okay, one thing I forgot to ask you the other day, I told you the name of Brahma's abode. Satyalok or Brahmalok, right. Okay, what else from today? What was the type of tree that Krishna is crawling towards that you're going to find out what happens? Arjun or Yamala Arjun? Yeah, it's called both. It's called an Arjun tree or it's a Yamala Arjun tree. And, what was the name of the island that Kaliya Nag had to go live on? Raman something. Ramarnak Dweep. What does Dweep mean? Yeah, island. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. You passed. Albeli Sarkar ki, Shrimat Sadguru Sarkar ki, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Jai Jai Shri Radhe. How many heads did Kaliya Nag have? 101. Yeah, 101.